Unit 3 is all going to be about energy, how things make energy, how they break it down, how they take it in from their environment, and how they process it. So let's start talking about energy and what it is and what our cells and bodies can do with it. There's lots of different kinds of energy, and basically what energy is kind of this weird nebulous thing. Energy is basically like the ability to cause change and to do some kind of work. Okay, basically we're going to be moving or rearranging matter in some way, shape, or form. So some energy is kinetic energy. That's energy when things are in motion. So like your body has it when you're moving. Also, the molecules in your body have it because they're always in motion. Thermal energy is just heat. And then potential energy is energy that is stored in an object. And then chemical energy is the energy that happens when chemical reactions are taking place. You don't need to super stress about these different kinds of energy, but just know that part of the reason why sometimes people can't have a hard time coming up with the definition of energy is because it's kind of present in lots of different forms and does lots of different things. And so these are just some of the forms it can take. But you don't need to super stress about the individuals of that. That's kind of more for like a advanced physics class, not for our purposes. Okay. But basically, if you are living, you need an input of energy, right? You have to keep inputting energy. Otherwise, it's not going to be so good for you. So for us, for humans, our input of energy would be food, right? We need to take in food. Otherwise, we would die because without it, our body is literally not going to have energy to run, to climb stairs, and even things to like pump our hearts and to breathe. If you were a lion, you know, you're not going to be eating oranges and pasta and strawberries. If you're a lion, your food, your energy is going to come from things like zebras. Sorry, Mr. Zebra. If you're a zebra, though, your food's going to be something like grass. Your energy is going to come from the grass. If you're a plant, where do you get your energy from? Not from quote unquote eating something, right? Plants get their energy from the sun and they use the sun's energy, the sunlight, to make their own energy, which is called photosynthesis, which is something we're going to be learning about later on in this unit. Okay. But basically, all living things, humans, mammals, plants, anything, they all need an energy input. Okay. Well, what if you don't have an energy input? Well, then you'll go to your reserves. We all have fat reserves built into us. And so your body will burn that, which is how you can like skip a meal and not die because your body's got those energy reserves, right? If you go too long without eating, though, then your body has to start digesting its own tissues, not just the fat, but your body will start digesting muscles and organs in order to survive. It goes into some really extreme survival mode. And then, of course, if that goes on long enough, then you would die because you've starved to death. Okay. And basically, however much energy you're expending, you have to take in more than that, not equal to that, more than that, because the energy conversion isn't perfect. Okay. We lose a lot of energy to heat. Which can be helpful because it ends up helping us keep our internal temperature warm. But that's why we have to eat like more energy than what we're expending because it's not a perfectly efficient process. We lose a lot of it along the way. Okay. So when we're talking about energy and stuff, we're going to be talking about all of the reactions that take place in order to keep us alive. And the vocab sciencey word for that is metabolism. Okay, so basically all the things that the cell is doing to keep that cell alive, which keeps that tissue alive, which keeps that organ alive, which keeps that body alive. All of those reactions that are happening are called metabolism. Okay, so this could be digestion, it could be respiration, it could be building polymers, it could be breaking polymers down, all these different things that your cells are doing. Making new organelles, making copies of the DNA if it's going to make a new cell, okay? And so there's all this reactions happening in your cells. And as it turns out, these reactions usually have some helpers, okay? And these helpers are called catalysts. It's anything that helps you speed up a reaction because sometimes these reactions take a while, but your cell needs them to happen faster. So they've got little helpers called catalysts. And an enzyme is a very specific type of protein that is a catalyst. And we're going to have a whole lecture devoted to enzymes, so I'm not going to talk about a lot about them right now, but just know that enzymes are something that speed up a chemical reaction, and that's also called a catalyst, okay? And so all these different reactions that are happening, your metabolism, they can take place in what's called a metabolic pathway. And basically what this means is you've got a molecule and it goes through step by step by step reactions. And the final product is kind of what your body is looking to get, but oftentimes it takes many steps and it doesn't just happen in one particular reaction. It's a multiple series of reactions, okay? And one enzyme is going to help you do that one reaction. Okay, let me show you an example. So here we go. We've got our starting thing, but we need it to be a different thing. So enzyme number 1 is going to do a reaction here, and that's going to make this product B. But B isn't our final product. So then enzyme 2 is going to come in and help a reaction happen, and that's going to make C. But then even maybe another enzyme happens, that's going to come in and make a reaction. Boom, and now we have our final product. Okay, this is an example of a metabolic pathway. Okay, we started with one thing. Through a series of reactions and enzymes, we ended up with something different. We've already learned about some metabolic pathways in general, because remember anabolic and catabolic, right? Remember when we took monomers and built a polymer? This is a metabolic pathway. Yeah. Also, when we take polymers and we break them down into the monomers, that's also a metabolic pathway. Okay. Notice this one requires an energy input, and this one releases energy. So getting back to energy, you might have heard of the first law of thermodynamics that says energy can't be created or destroyed. It can be transferred from one form to another, okay? So we can't just run a marathon without fueling our bodies, okay? We have to get that energy from our food. The second law of thermodynamics says that basically when energy gets transferred, it increases the entropy, which is disorder. And this can be kind of hard to think about, but think about maybe like your room. And if you were to just not do anything to your room, what would happen? It would get messier and messier and messier. And the only way for it to not do that is you have to put in energy cleaning it up. Okay, that's the natural order of things. If you don't cut the grass in your yard, then it's going to grow really, really big and all these weeds are going to come in. It's going to get more disorderly. Okay, so that is also what's going to happen in our bodies and in our cells too. Okay, so when we're talking about this with like metabolism and the reactions required to be alive, basically some things that increase disorder and increase entropy, those things are going to happen really easily. They're called spontaneous because they're energetically favorable. They don't need an energy input. They happen on their own. Okay, so think back to anabolic or catabolic. Which things happen on their own without energy? That'd be catabolic, right? Catabolic, because they release energy. They don't require an energy input. So catabolic things will be spontaneous and happen on its own because it increases disorder because you've got more products. Here's another way to look at it, okay? So here's catabolic up top. Here are your reactants. When this happens, you have, boom, less energy. Energy is released. And so here we go with our products. So energy is released. This is spontaneous. It just breaks down by itself, okay? Anabolic, though, you got to connect those things together. Here are the reactants. Here's the products. Notice we need more energy in the products. There's going to be energy input. And so this is going to be non-spontaneous. Non-spontaneous, okay? And I'm going to talk about what these G values mean in a second. The G values stand for Gibbs free energy. And you don't really have to worry about calculating this anymore. Thanks, AP exam. But you need to know that G basically says, hey, how much of energy is available to do work? Okay. And if you've got a lot of energy, there's a higher G, but that means that it's pretty unstable. And things don't want to be unstable. They want to be stable. So for example, high up on a diving board, you're pretty unstable. Once you get to the bottom, you're more stable. So this is high G, low G. Things cluster together, high G. Things spread apart, low G, low Gibbs, okay? So these things that go from a high G to a low G will help the system become more stable, and they will be spontaneous. Okay, so let's go back to those equations then. Notice that the reactants have more energy than the products, okay? So because we end up like losing energy out of the system here, this is going to be a negative G, but a negative G leads to a spontaneous reaction, okay? Whereas this here, we increase the energy that's added. Energy has to be inputted, okay? So we go from a low G to a high G. This G value is positive, and that's non-spontaneous. So anabolic are non-spontaneous, positive G, and catabolic are spontaneous and negative G. Okay. Well, what about a G that's 0? Well, that would mean that everything would be in equilibrium and your cells would no longer need to do any work. And that would also mean that they would be dead. Things are alive as long as energy is flowing. But this really never happens. Your cells are always doing reactions and always working. So you always have some kind of energy flowing in your cells. And if you don't, that means your cell is dead. As long as it's alive, it will do work. So speaking of work, here are some of the things that your cell can do and needs to do. Chemical work. So your cell's going to need to do work to do those anabolic reactions that aren't going to occur spontaneously, right? To make those polymers, your cell's going to need to do work. Also transporting, moving things across the membrane, or actually literally moving things takes work. That muscle contraction, any type of movement of your cells is going to be mechanical work as well, okay? So these are the 3 kinds of cellular work that your cells do. And where do they get the energy to do this work? And that's going to be ATP, which is what our next lecture is going to be about, okay? So more on ATP later. Here are the main highlights of things we talked about in this lecture, if you're looking to see what are the main things you should know. And here's where this can be found in your textbook, Chapter 6, Sections 1 and 2.